Coming up,
It's really sad. You feel abandoned, unworthy.
a life of torment.
It's pretty shocking. Sorry.
This young woman is the victim of a failed system.
Residential care, it's a flawed concept.
She should have been protected, but wasn't.
What kind of parent do you think the Victorian government is being?
It's a horrible parent.
So who's prepared to finally stand up
They are being sexually exploited, targeted by predators.
and right the wrongs?
Why aren't we all outraged about this?
We are failing these children in terrible ways.
That's next on 60 Minutes.
It's almost unimaginable. Last November, a 12-year-old girl in Victoria was charged with murder after allegedly stabbing a 37-year-old woman to death. A few days ago, the charges were dropped because, being so young, it was determined the girl didn't have the mental capacity to be held criminally responsible for her actions. But what's important to know about this case is that at the time, she was the responsibility of the state. The girl was living in what's called residential care, homes that are supposedly supervised, safe places for vulnerable children. It seems, though, they're not. Tonight, Nine's Christine Ahern meets a very brave young woman who suffered so much in residential care, she's demanding big changes.
Life hasn't been fair to 20-year-old Jess. Her upbringing has been one no one deserves. She's never been allowed to be a kid. Her trauma began at a very young age.
We were always having to call the police and report the domestic violence. So when I was about 5, child protection got called, and then they got involved because of the alcohol consumption and use of some substances. Eventually, my mum's ex-partner did go to prison for the domestic violence.
I can imagine that must have affected your behaviour as a little kid.
Yeah, I think I really acted out in school based off, things that were going on at home. So, I was quite disengaged.
Disengaged is an understatement. She wagged school, started taking drugs, and at 14, she was raped. Things at home were terrible, but life was about to get a whole lot worse. So, Jess, what's it like being back here?
Sad, overwhelming, and it reminds me a lot of the trauma.
The real pain for Jess began when, at 15, she was moved into a residential care facility, a place meant to look after at-risk kids like her. We can't reveal her true identity, but tonight she's speaking out for the first time to show how the damage from a government system almost broke her. You're a 15-year-old kid and you're told your option now is residential care. Did you know what that was?
No idea. I wasn't very aware of what I was going to be in for. You don't really understand until you're there and you walk in and you're like, wow, this is not home. As soon as you walk into the house, there is bedrooms, they have locks on them, so then other young people can't steal things from your rooms.
So it was just a sterile environment?
Yeah.
Residential care, or Resi as it's known to the kids who live there, is set up for vulnerable children aged 12 and up who can't find a foster home. They're effectively the kids that no one else wants. Their only carers are lowly paid and mostly inexperienced shift workers. But instead of protecting these kids, the reality is these homes are doing more damage than good. For Jess, the despair started immediately.
When I went in there, they basically just showed me my room and then shut the door and left me. So I was full of anxiety. I didn't know what area I was in because it was a new area. I didn't know who I was living with, and I was just, very scared. I actually ended up, because I didn't know where the bathroom was, urinating in a cup because I was too scared to leave my room.
That must have been awful for you.
Yeah.
What were you... That's okay.
Have a drink.
That's all right, of course. It's okay, take your time.
Sorry.
That's okay. I can see that must have been an awful time in your life.
Yeah.
Describe what was going through your mind at the time.
I feel like it was just a very dehumanising moment that I didn't even know where the bathroom was. I've already feel so unworthy.
Because it's such a simple thing to show someone where a bathroom is.
Yeah.
Jess is not alone. Last year, more than 4,000 children across Australia ended up in state government-run residential care facilities. For Jess, it meant her new parents became the Victorian government. What kind of parent do you think the Victorian government is being?
It's the worst parent you can imagine. It's a horrible parent.
As a former social worker and Victorian Children's Commissioner, Bernie Geary knows exactly why the system is crumbling.
It's a flawed concept, residential care, where many young people who have got really difficult and sad backgrounds and in fact been traumatised in early childhood are brought together, and it's almost like a funnel. They're poured into a house, and their backgrounds and their sadness impacts on each other.
Because these kids, they're the most vulnerable kids that are going into resi, aren't they?
Yes, they are.
To be blunt, it's the kids that nobody wants.
Absolutely nobody wants them.
In Jess's home, she was thrown in with 3 other teenagers who were all complete strangers.
I felt very isolated, unwelcomed, and it was just a really lonely environment. You might have people around you might be going through the same thing, but you really do just sit in your room all day and have nobody. And then when you have workers that aren't very engaging or not even coming out their office, it is their job to come to you and reach out to you and see what you need.
Did you feel forgotten?
Yeah, you're literally just another number.
The number that sticks in Jess's mind is 137. She hated residential care so much, she ran away 137 times. And every time the police turned up to take her back. But instead of compassion, she was treated like a criminal.
A warrant will go out for your arrest. So then police will come try locate you and arrest you and bring you back. You're not being charged for a crime, but you're constantly in handcuffs. I think that's very unnecessary in some circumstances. You should, to be brought back to your home, you shouldn't be getting put in a divvy van. We're young people that are vulnerable, we're not criminals, and it's not appropriate.
So as a 15-year-old, if you're placed in handcuffs, put in the back of a police van and driven back?
Yeah. I was like, this is not okay, this is not correct. You make me feel even more worthless than what I'm already feeling.
When you hear Jess's story, it's hard to believe that in fact she is one of the lucky ones who have been through residential care. As you'll see, others are preyed upon by criminal networks who target the kids to sexually exploit them.
They are the most vulnerable. People who pimp kids out look for the most vulnerable, so they're easy targets.
By the time Jess was 15, she'd already seen too much of the dark side of life. To keep her safe, she'd been moved into a Victorian government-funded residential care facility. But she didn't feel safe at all. Jess hated it, so she constantly ran away.
I don't blame anybody that runs away because you don't want to be there. And then the lack of support, it's really sad. And you feel abandoned, unworthy, and it's pretty shocking.
So they took you out of your home so you would be cared for in a better way?
Yeah.
Did that happen?
No. It was worse.
The current Victorian Children's Commissioner, Leanna Buchanan, believes responsibility for this lack of care goes all the way to the top. She's tired of fighting a state government that's not doing enough to provide a safe and loving environment for the traumatised kids who, like Jess, end up rebelling.
They're doing that because they don't feel connected to placement, they don't feel connected to the workers there, They don't feel safe there often, and it certainly doesn't feel like home.
So they're running away?
They're running away.
Hundreds of times?
Indeed, indeed. And when they're away, they are being victimised, they are being targeted by predators.
See the look on the faces of young people who do it hard.
Renowned Melbourne youth worker Les Twentyman dedicated his life to helping vulnerable children. He too knew about the chilling stories of kids from residential care running away and being preyed upon by criminal gangs.
Hey, Christine, it's Les 21.
Sadly, just days before we were to interview him for this story, he died suddenly. But what he revealed during our conversations in the lead up to his death was alarming. What Les told me was that here on the streets of Footscray, he had seen a 12-year-old girl sell herself to adult men. He contacted police, but nothing was done. As it turns out, she lived in a residential care home he already had serious concerns about. He told me it was a tragedy in the making. Sadly, Les was right. Last November, that 12-year-old girl allegedly stabbed a 37-year-old woman to death.
7 phone calls have gone into the police about this particular young person.
Remarkably, she had run away from residential care 275 times. And Les wasn't the only one gravely worried about her.
Were you surprised when this 12-year-old girl was charged with murder?
No, I wasn't surprised because I was waiting. It was a time bomb waiting to happen because...
Dr Burhan Ahmed is the CEO of AfriCause, a youth charity in Footscray. He too saw the 12-year-old with suspicious, much older men.
What age are we talking about?
You know, in the 30s.
So this 12-year-old girl was with men in their 30s?
Yes. They were really adult, and that was the concern for me. But, you know, who do you talk? We told police, and police only have, when there is something happening, they come. But if there is nothing, they will not.
4 days ago, the murder charge was dropped after it was decided the girl doesn't have the mental capacity to be held responsible. She'll likely now be sent to a secure facility. But it beggars belief that a child was allegedly being prostituted here on the streets of Melbourne. What's equally stunning is that it happened under the watch of a state government supposed to be parenting this child. While the Commissioner has launched an inquiry into this case, she knows full well this is not an isolated incident. Incredibly, last year her office received 160 reports of 85 children being the victim of child sexual exploitation.
What we're talking about is children as young as 11 being offered money and drugs in exchange for sex. If that's not a crime worth tackling, I don't know what is.
Are we talking about organised crime figures preying on these kids?
I have no doubt that there are networks of predators who are organised, who understand where residential care homes are, who understand how vulnerable the children in these homes will be, and who target those homes and who target those children.
Commissioner, that is a shocking statistic. Why aren't we all outraged about this?
I wish I had the answer. People are uncomfortable. People don't care. People think of these as children who are not children like their children, and we are failing these children in terrible ways.
But the disturbing figures don't shock Bernie Geary. He was the Victorian Children's Commissioner before Leanna Buchanan. Between the pair of them, they've notched up nearly 20 years on the job. Yet nothing has changed. How does that make you feel, given how hard you've fought to stop this kind of stuff?
Pretty sad, actually. Yep.
Why do you think it impacts you so much?
Oh, because sometimes you think, is there anything I could have done? Sometimes it's just the damn frustration of it.
You can understand Bernie's feelings of defeat.
It was broken. We're all traumatised maintaining a system that's broken.
When you take a look at this report he wrote for the Victorian government nearly 10 years ago, while he was still the Commissioner. Did the Victorian government listen to your recommendations?
Oh, they pretended to listen, and they made a few efforts around those issues that I was most concerned about, but it's gone backwards.
Victorian Premier Jacinta Allen is adamant her government continues to provide enough funding support for the residential care system.
This needs ongoing work and effort, I will acknowledge that.
But there's been 160 cases of sexual exploitation in residential care in the last year. Is that not a failure?
And I would disagree with that characterisation. Each of those individual cases have a range of really challenging, complex and quite a level of personal detail that I'm just not going to go into this morning.
But Bernie Geary says the government should spend more money on keeping the kids in their own homes and out of residential care altogether. He's also served on the Youth Parole Board for 20 years and has seen the direct link between damaged resi kids and youth crime. So there's a flow of kids from residential care into crime.
Absolutely, yes. I wouldn't call it a flow, I'd call it a gush.
If we fix residential care, do you think there would be a drop in youth crime?
Oh, absolutely. If we supported children in their home environment, there would be a huge drop in juvenile crime, but no government's game enough to do it.
After a year of suffering in residential care, Jess decided it was safer to go back to the difficulties in her family home rather than risk staying in the government-run facility. 4 years on, she's courageously managed to overcome her damaging childhood and now, at 20, is studying to be a youth worker. Her sights are set on making a difference and, incredibly, she wants to work in the very places that did her the most harm. So you want to go back and help someone just like you?
Yeah, it's a warm feeling that you can go through that and then give back.
When you tell your story to other young people that are going through similar things, what's their response?
It really doesn't define you. If anything, I feel like it makes us stronger. And if you can use your story and put it in a positive way and think of it like, you know, in a good way, your life is going to be remarkable.
Hello, I'm Amelia Adams. Thanks for watching 60 Minutes Australia. Subscribe to our channel now for brand new stories and exclusive clips every week. And don't miss out on our extra minute segments and full episodes of 60 Minutes on 9now.com.au and the 9Now app.